go into the library and you would always tell me, oh, don't read that book. Like, you're too young to read that book.
And then, of course, that would be the book you would read. She's always been supremely curious. So
you would think I would be getting around a little bit more.
Hold on. Time out. Hey, time out. First of all, let me just say, hey, Jada, your mama look good, bro. I'm gonna just throw that out there right now. Whatever you doing, Mama Pinkett Smith, whatever you doing, I'll like, keep it going, girl. You doing good. But like, wait.
He is gold. Yes.
Like, hey, so guys, what we walked into right now, she is having a sex ed conversation, obviously in public where everybody else can see. But she's doing it with her daughter too as well. And right now, that's just the context right there. And we were just talking about, like, you know, how open you will with your daughter and this whole accountability and whatnot. So we'll really see if Jada's with the stuff. Before we get into it, let's welcome another guest here. Hey, girl, how you doing? DL, right?
Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, how you doing, girl? Welcome back. How you doing?
Good. How you been?
Good. Welcome to the show. So, first of all, introduce yourself. Say hi to the audience. Let me minimize this real quick. What's good, girl? Say hi. Say hi to the people.
Hi, DL here in Florida.
All right. So what we're talking about, how familiar are you with the whole what do you call it? Jada Pinkett and Will Smith situation, right? What are your thoughts on that initially with the whole what do you call it, controversy with the entitlement, you know, when that whole thing came out, and then now the ongoing table talk with Mama and, you know, all these other girls talking about, you know, their sex lives and all that shit.
I mean, I think everybody came at Jada way too much because it seems like a lot of people missed that part in the interview where she had said that she like because Will was like, oh, I'm gonna get you back, and she's like, oh, I think you did enough of that. Like, oh, okay, so it's okay for him but not for her.
Okay. So see, okay. So now, what would you say to other people who would say? Because for instance, my stance would be, okay, listen, I understand that situation, and then we're gonna have a conversation after this video too, as well, on, you know, extramarital, you know, situations that you guys. Is that okay? Is it, you know, whatnot? But my thing is, I understandably so, someone like that, Will Smith and Jada on that level, of course, they're gonna have some kind of agreement, right? And obviously, that agreement. Okay, I mentioned this earlier, and we talked about this where I was like, I'd be surprised if Will Smith, all right, didn't have something on the side, right? I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case, okay? But apparently that's the case, and I'm assuming that the deal that they had, because the video we watched previous to this was August Alsina saying he gave me his blessing. So I'm sure they had that situation under the agreement that there wasn't this level of embarrassment, right? This level of scrutiny, this level of attention brought to the relationship and their entanglement situation, right? So I don't think the argument. Okay, maybe you get some guys who are coming at Jada saying, okay, this is wrong. And I definitely, when I first heard about it, the predator nonsense, I was like, listen, you a predator. Like, in my book, she's still a predator, right? But it's one of those things where, listen, you'll find out why. All right, but she's still a predator in my book. But after reading into the situation a little bit more, because I went at August, I had no qualms about it, right? But then I'm thinking about, I'm like, this could have been a kid who got into a situation where he couldn't understand, and Jada not, you know, helping out, you know, was sloppy with it and brought all this attention to the scenario or the situation that we're in. And to make it worse, Will Smith didn't handle it the proper way.
Are you
how
sure
he was supposed to handle it.
She was female that all this attention was brought to it, but when Will was doing it, it was cool.
No,
Like,
well,
it
okay.
was
Let me ask you like this, because okay, we don't hear about Will's stuff, but I'm assuming he's doing it.
I was gonna say that.
He's not doing it with someone who's his daughter's friend, right? Because that's a whole nother situation itself, right? Listen, I don't care if if that's what they decide to do, that's fine. But don't you see a problem with that being someone that's so close to her son's age and her son's demographic and things like that? You go ahead and get with that. Like, don't you see that that's like a sloppy problem?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's, I didn't realize he was the son's friend.
Yeah, they were best friends.
DL, can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
So what would happen if it was Will instead of Jada? And Will's side mistress or something came out and she was hurt and he locked her out of, any closure or anything like that. And as women, we would feel for her for the most part, especially if, she has the facts, receipts, and got Jada's blessing. But Will didn't handle it correctly. Would we not be on his side or on him the same way we are as Jada as well? Especially probably even more.
I don't know, because I mean, like I said, they're both doing their dirt first. So for me, it's like, I don't know.
I feel you. I just think like it's not saying that blame goes either way. If anything, I put the blame more on Jada's because she brought the whole mess in. Listen, you could have dealt with anybody else. Literally, you could have found you Rico Suave any other part of the world. All right, you decided to stick with your fun's friend. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? And I'm sure Will would be in that situation where he was okay with it. Matter of fact, he came out in an interview saying, "Listen." Which I don't know if he was faking or not, but he basically said, listen, it's okay, I okayed it, this is what is happening, it's not a big deal, right? But then it's just like, all right, when they had the little table talk and she was talking about her entanglements, you could tell he was kind of hurt by it. And I think the part he was hurt by was like, yo, this is my kid's friend, bro. Like, what is this? Like this is what y'all doing? Like, this is the craziness that's happening. This is how all this stuff's unfolding. Like, this is like wild. And I think there was more information in that entanglement that probably came out that Will Smith probably didn't expect to come out. It's just sloppy.
I mean, Hollywood's a weird place anyway. So, I mean, Hollywood's a weird place anyway.
That's
so it's like, that
That's
doesn't really surprise me that it would be the friend. Like, people do stuff to their own family members in real life, not just in Hollywood. So
yep. No, that's fast. What the video that we're going to be reacting to is Jada, and this was the more recent one, the Red Table Talk, right? And she's kind of going into detail. Right now, they're talking about sex, right? Sex ed and all that stuff like that. But she also goes into kind of, it wasn't like a too deep of a detail, but kind of like her situation in the bedroom, how she's never felt, I won't say passion, but like orgasm or whatnot. I wouldn't say she never felt it, but like she was kind of talking about that situation. And then she goes in to talk about kind of other stuff too as well, where it's talking about if you love me, right, you're supposed to know. And the whole show right now is supposed to be about accountability. So let me ask this question to you guys. In terms of like sex ed and when it's okay to have that conversation with your kids, because that's what they're kind of talking about right now. And I don't know why the video is like kind of choppy. It's Facebook, go figure. But it's one of those things like, okay, so when is the appropriate time do you think that your kids should be hearing this stuff? And should it come from the parents first versus outside influences like what do you call it? Schools and all these other programs geared towards it.
Okay, I'll go. I don't have children, so I don't want to act like I know everything about this. So I'll just say how I would go about things. I have 3 nieces. And they're at the age where they're experiencing puberty, things like that. So even though it's not necessarily fully time for the sex talk, I would just more monitor of what's going on now. If they like a boy, I'll talk to them more and say, okay, what's going on with you and this boy in class, or things like that. Keep in mind, I don't have kids, so I'm probably failing tremendously on how to handle this. But I would say always have an open line of communication. I do agree with some of these things. It is kind of hard to talk about sex without talking about sex, because sex is, nowadays, there's 50 million variations of it. It's a lot different, and people are experimenting a lot more than back then. But to come, like I said, to come from it from an explorative mindset and just talk about the fun things and, oh, this is fun and this and that, you have to fully educate them on everything that comes with sex. Everything that comes with connecting. Like, hey, if I have an open marriage, this person may feel some type of way, or I may need to cut them off. Like, I just think that there's ways to go about conversations, no matter what conversation you have.
Okay. So go ahead, DL. What are your thoughts?
Well, I have 3 boys.
Okay.
And ever since they were younger, I don't know, they've pretty much felt comfortable to tell me things, because I kind of told them some like little things first, when they were younger. That way it would open up, them feeling more comfortable to come to me when they actually had more serious questions. No, I mean, they'll joke about stuff now, and they're that open. And I'd rather that and them come to me than asking their little friends who don't know everything and think that they know everything.
Right.
So
Because that's where you can easily get into trouble too, as well. And I would agree. I would say a charity begins at home. I think a lot of parents need to have that conversation with their kids in the way that they feel comfortable in. Because if you're not doing that, the real world is going to have that conversation. And I'm not sure if you're going to like the format that they put it in. Just being real. But yeah, I think that parents got to be the first barrier to have that conversation with their kids. You know, just be honest with them and let them know. Listen, kids aren't stupid, man. Like if you lie to them, they'll pick it up because they'll learn it either on the internet, they'll learn it at school. So it's better for them to hear it up front from their parents, you know, in a respectful, straightforward manner, and then go from there. It's kind of like I like it to when I was younger, right? The whole reason why I didn't get into like, you know, getting drunk at 21 and whatnot, because I've been drinking since like I had a glass of wine at dinner time since I was like fucking 7 years old with the family. So it's like one little thing poured in, and we have dinner. It was all right, and we continued that tradition going up. So when you're older, it's not like, oh shit, I got liquor. Now I got to go wild out 21. Now I got to go do all this stuff. It's like, okay, I've had it. I've done it. It is what it is, right? Done it under the roof of my parents, and now it's like I can be responsible out there. So I like it. It's the same thing with sex ed. You have the conversation about the consequences of sex, what happens when you have sex, and even these guys, they kind of go into the first time hurting, and then what's it? The daughter Willow was over here talking about it's a patriarchal thing for women or for people to tell girls that their first time having sex is gonna hurt. And I'm sitting there like, wait, what? How's that a patriarchal? Like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I don't know how it is for most women. I'm not gonna say I know. I'm just saying that, listen, if that's facts and most women have that experience where if it's a first time and it's not the best, well, I mean, I think that's something that should be talked about. I think what she's doing is horrible. She needs to keep that private business private. The more she makes this public, the worse it looks for her family. Because if we're talking about accountability, this is all just selfishness to me. She's thinking about herself. She is not once in an objective way, even up to this point, she did this video, literally address August and his situation and what he's going through right now. It's kind of like right under the rug, and everyone's just like, you know, it is what it is. This happened, and now we're just going about our business, you know, things like that. It's honestly sad. It really is. What do you guys think?
That's what makes it predatorial for me, even though I do have a upbringing where I had a lot of respect for her.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially, like I said, she's coming off to be this healer or this person, and yet here's this unhealed person that needs closure from specifically something you did, and you're just like, oh, no entanglement, I don't see it, it's not
right.
Like I can't really get behind that. I like that we're all having a conversation on this, and in a way there's always a silver lining to it. At least we're having the uncomfortable conversations. I think that's what she was looking to manifest more,
right?
But it kind of backfired. But at least we're having the conversation. There are some things that she was saying as far as the whole sex talk. The reason I didn't comment too much on it, because as a woman, I'm not just going to discuss certain things on public, but I feel like that was more woman talk. That was more girl to girl talk, things that we have with our grandmothers and our mothers about becoming a woman and things like that. So if that's what that purpose was for, that's what it was for. But I can't really speak much else because I'm not really that verbally open to just publicly speak on those matters. Like,
perfect. Hey, Yende, my bad, bro. Welcome to the stream.
What's up, brother?
What's up? I thought it was, you were like, yo, where's your face, bro? Like,
yeah,
I couldn't see your face.
I've been listening though. I was keeping up with
it. Hey, throw your input in this, man. We're talking about this whole Will and Jada situation, the entanglement, all the way from August Alsina to the situation that's going on now with the, you know, the red table talk and the ongoing embarrassment that she's causing Will Smith. All that. Like, what are your thoughts on
it? Well, I mean, you know me, man. I always got to go way deeper. I got the tinfoil hat on at all times. So, take everything that I know about Will, that I know about Jada, that I know about their son, their daughter, the industry. Honestly, I think it's a psyop. I think all this is intentional. It's another attack on the nuclear family. I think they build these celebrities up. They build up these power couples. You know, they in America fall in love with them, to take advice from them. And then next thing you know, they start pushing these dysfunctional behaviors on us and justifying it.
So I'm not sure if I would say there's a definitive person in charge, trying to make this happen in terms of this. I think it's more of a case of everyone kind of like following a certain trend. Now, I do believe that there's certain elements that are being kept in place to be able to say, hey, have these guys be your influence. No, listen to these guys. No, up is down and down is up. No, this is what you guys to believe. And I think that starts with our children and taking advantage of our children in these schools and whatnot to be able to kind of move from there.
And I think it's planned. And basically what they're trying to do is usher the next generation into accepting, and it's taking hold, man. I can already see it. 10 years from now, men are going to be expected to allow their wives to to have sex outside.
But what are your thoughts on so far on what he says? DL.
I get it. Like, I definitely think that celebrities and politicians, I mean, they all have this idea of like how they want things to go, and they push the trends. And I mean, it's all media.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Waylon?
Suela.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Suela. Yeah, Suela XO. What do you think? The plan to break up the nuclear family.
You know what? As a woman, it's hard to talk on the subject.
How so?
But I agree. It's definitely an agenda being pushed. I believe that whatever you call it, feminine energy, divine feminine, whatever you want to address the female nature as, it is very misguided right now, and there is agenda that is being pushed. Like I said, hey, I'm sexually explorative, but then now my marriage is in shambles in front of everyone. So how well is it working out for us? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they're trying to show us, though. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to use Will and Jada to convince us that this is a successful marriage.
We just got done talking about that too, Suela. Because that's the way I felt with Will Smith. And tell me if I'm wrong, Allende, but I think even throughout the 90s, the early 2000s, late 2000s, when we looked at Will and Jada Smith, especially in the Black community, that was like the couple. So then to see them kind of going through this, and it's just like, wait, what's happening? And on top of that, to do it in the worst way, which is your kid's friend. That doesn't make any sense to me. But like just seeing the crumpling of that unit, which was literally gave a lot of people hope that okay, maybe celebrity couples can work. Maybe like high status couples can set an example of what a good relationship to be. Now, and I'm not saying that relationships should be straightforward, monogamous, and this and that. There are obviously bends and rules. I've met people who have like all kinds of relationship type of dynamics, which to me is just like, but it works for them. But it's one of those things where I'm talking about if you're trying to paint a picture of who you are, who your kids are, who your family are, and you guys are this couple. I mean, to see all that unfold in kind of the worst and I would say vindictively petty way, it just seems horrible to me.
Well, I mean, they sell everything to us. Everything is sold to us. Our opinion on everything is sold to us. Our sense of reality, it's all sold to us. We're all just the product of the input that we've experienced growing up. So on a subconscious level, based on your age, different celebrities are going to affect you differently. You just can't really put your finger on it because it's subconscious. For example, Bill Cosby, we all growed up with him being sold to us as the ideal Black father. So that's how he's embedded in us. That's how we know him, on a subconscious level. So as things change currently, part of our brain still looks at him or anyone else the way that they were first introduced to us. You get what I'm saying? So they build him up as this ideal father in the Black community, and then next thing you know, they tear him down and they label him as a rapist or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So You got to understand that there's a mental trauma happening now because in your brain something is broken. So things can be broken physically, but things can also be broken mentally. So if your image of him was this, and then they broke that, so there's a trauma there. Now because it's in a subconscious place, you're not dealing with it. We're not healing from that. So that's going to affect us because think about it like this. How many people between the age of 30 and 45 at some point in time in their childhood said to themselves, I wish Bill Cosby was my father. Or I wish Dr. Huxtable was my father. You might not have said it out loud, but you said it to yourself on the inside because
That's
you were
facts.
growing up without a dad, or maybe a dysfunctional dad, or a dad that was an underachiever. And then you saw this black man who had his house in order. He was a doctor, but he always had time for his family. His wife was smart, but still respected him. So, you know, his kids had their issues, but he always, you know what I'm saying? He was good with the
Yeah.
little kids. He was good with the teenage kids. He was good with the wife. He was always good with all the women. So in your head, I'm sure majority of us has said to ourselves, damn, I wish Bill Cosby was my dad. And then when we going into our teenage years, I'm sure plenty of us said, damn, Jada's fine. Ooh, when I grow up, I'm gonna marry Jada. So there's a trauma
I
going
want a
on.
girl like Jada, bruh. Give me a girl like Jada.
That's what I'm saying. So there's a trauma going on. They keep building these people up, and then they keep tearing these people down in front of us, and we've already invested in them. So that's why you got these little, you know, kids. They invested in the Miley Cyrus. They invested in her when she was a kid on Disney, bro. So that don't just go away is what I'm trying to say. We're always going to have a soft spot for those people. It ain't going to go away. So when those people start doing degenerate shit, automatically we're going to sympathize with that behavior because we're sympathizing with the persona that we fell in love with.
I got something to add to that too, and I want you to see if you can expand on that because you brought up an excellent point. And when we were talking about because we're not gonna play the rest of the interview. I don't know what Facebook is tripping right now with the slowdown and speed ups, but I'm sure you guys have already seen some of it on other channels have covered it. But they also talk about like Gwyneth Paltrow also talks about like promiscuity with young women, right? And how like Instagram and all these other places are, you know, over where women are objectifying themselves and things like that, or society's objectifying women. My thing is when you're looking at these role models, okay, let's do with Miley Cyrus, right? All or even just all these other women who came up through the Nickelodeon or Disney Channel networks, right? All right, they were, you know, paraded to us as something that our daughters or our sons can look up to as some of these like, oh, this is a girl, she's being painted one way in media, and you grew up with it, right? And all of a sudden, due to some weird influence, when they get to a certain age, all of a sudden they're showing out, right? They're showing all this stuff. It's okay to do this, and you know, the little girls are seeing that. Oh, it's okay. Like, you know, this is my hero. I'm gonna go ahead and dress like Miley Cyrus, or I'm gonna go ahead and dress like some of these Disney Channel girls. Now, here's the thing, right? The way I've always seen it growing up from the outside looking in, it's like, okay, maybe they're getting older and they're trying to break out of that role and maybe trying to show some things. Or now that I'm realizing when you're hearing some of this stuff with the record labels and how some of these managers get down, was this something that was also kind of pushed onto them? Because when I look at that stuff, I look at the Billie Eilish. Is that her name? Billie Eilish, right? Where all of a sudden she's making a big deal about wearing, like, showing her cleavage. It's like, girl, like, what are you, like, what is this? Oh, I'm coming out. I'm like, oh, this is my time to be sexual. It's like, why are you making such a big deal about this, bro? It's just you. Just be you. You've always been you. Why do you have to feel the need to change to something else? Like, are you being pushed on the back end, or are you just trying to you're feeling a completely different, weird, conflicting emotion because you're seeing other girls on social media and that's your influence? But go ahead.
I mean, I just think it's who's signing the checks, bro. You know what
Okay.
I'm saying? I think the people that pull the strings, they print money. They don't have no value for money. They don't do things for money. They actually create money out of thin air. So the next tier down, they're motivated by the opportunity to move up to that top tier, and the top underneath that is motivated by, you know what I'm saying, money. And everybody thereafter below that, it's all, you know, motivated by money, 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 money. So I mean, you could always pay one half of poor people to kill the other half. Well, with that being said, you can always take people, give them fame and popularity, you know, for their talent, and then you steer that influence where you want it. So, for example, back in the 90s, they told us Magic Johnson had AIDS. Okay, you believe that if you want to. I think what they were trying to say is even Magic Johnson has AIDS. So now you accept it because you're like, damn, if even the most wealthiest, healthiest athletes in the world can get AIDS, I guess anybody can get AIDS. So now you look at Will Smith. They kept telling you he's a funny dude. He's a handsome dude. He's tall. He's athletic. He's charismatic. You know what I'm saying? He's an alpha when he needs to be. Oh, shit. This nigga taking this type of shit from his wife? I guess who am I to expect more than that? I mean, if Will Smith got to put up with this, I guess this is just what it is.
You also, correct me if I'm wrong, you also hear this in the manosphere space too as well. And some we won't mention them by name, but some of these podcasts like, hey, guys, all right, listen, it happened to Will Smith. It happened to girls are gonna do this no matter what. All right, this is just how girls are naturally are. Okay, even if you're this, she's gonna do this. So you gotta act this way. So we see that. I can't even fucking do that with a straight face, bro. We see that in the manner of being pre-show. So is this part of the what it is like now they're selling that image where it's like, listen, like you said, even Will Smith now, dude, do you even have hope that you can get into a stable relationship? Do you even have hope that you can find a good woman that you thought was Jada, or unless we made it seem like Jada was the right one? So now a bunch of guys who are looking at that celebrity situation, they're like probably like crushed, like August Alsina, like goddamn, like there's no hope.
I'm looking at it this way. What they're trying to do is they're trying to prevent the leadership in the household. They want to take away the leadership. They want to strip the protection, and they want the women and the children vulnerable. So if you make marriage so unattractive to any self-respecting man, right there, you're convinced to anybody that's got that type of mindset. If you feel like an outfit, or you carry yourself like you're the leader of your household, you lead and protect your family. If you have that thought process, then you're not going to accept the terms that come with modern marriage. So guess what you're not going to do? You're probably not going to reproduce. You're not going to get married, which means you're not going to father children and lead a household. Now, what men are? The type of men that would accept that type of bullshit. The soft ass, beta ass niggas that would go for that. That's who will still take that chance and take that family. Well, where does that leave the house? Still vulnerable, still without leadership. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So either way, they're getting what they want, which is the ability to control individuals with no resistance. You look at how they run the farm, you only need a couple males for breeding. The rest of the farm is all female, and it's all controlled, and there's no resistance from the animals. So that's where they want us, and that's where they're gonna have us. Who's gonna be taking that vax? Think about it. Who's gonna be taking that jab? People that are either scared or people that are forced to in order to earn an income. So if you got somebody that's strong in these homes, those are men that are going to be forced to protest, because it's not even about them at that point. It's about their women and their children. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Let me address this real quick. Hey, Jay Jern, I appreciate you. You seem like a new person into the chat. No, listen, we don't pitch narrative over here. I give it 100% stat. Swaley, I'm sorry. And DL kind of had their opinions on this too. No, like we both hold Will Smith accountable. If anything, I hold him even more accountable for letting this shit get out of hand. So we're not preaching a narrative here saying that Will Smith's innocent. I've said it multiple times on this stream. Okay, Will Smith probably knew there was a deal going on, and we also played a clip where August Alsina said allegedly, that's his words, that Will Smith gave the okay for that to happen. So we hold him accountable to it. We're not saying that Jada is evil. I'm just saying with Jada's point. Why her son's friend? Like you're fucking Jada Pinkett Smith. Like you can get any guy you want. Hell, your mama can get any dude she wants, right? So what? I don't get why her friend, right? So what's the whole situation with that? It just seemed like a toxic situation to begin with. What?
But they listen. This is what they want, man. Straight to K. You know what I'm saying? Whatever the Most High wants for us, they want the opposite. So when you're looking at it, it's just all dysfunction. It's just all slackness is what it is, right? There's no borders. There's no boundaries. There's no self-control. Because here's the thing. What the hell is going on to why Will Smith would even be accepting or encouraging or allowing his woman to be having extra marital relations? Now, if they got something going on to whereas Will is not in a position to demand fidelity, okay, so the question is then what was Will doing? What was Will doing that he got to give up that deal to his wife? What did he get caught doing where he has to be like, all right, well, you could do your little thing too. So, okay, that's still
DL, you said something about that too earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's like if you open up that door for the open marriage, it's like, what do you expect?
Yeah, but why? Why should there? My thing is why are we accepting of an open marriage? Is what I'm trying to say. Like, we're not supposed to be accepting of that at all. Now, I'm not saying that people don't have the right to do it. That's not what I'm saying. People got the right to do whatever the hell they want. Sin is free. You know what I'm saying? The problem is, don't be trying to convince the masses or people in general that this behavior is appropriate. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. If you're doing that, you need to super keep it to yourself. That's what I'm trying to say. That's why they have swingers clubs and all kind of stuff for people like that. And guess what? You got to be a member. It's discreet. You see what I'm saying? That's okay.
So
That's where you go do that at, not
well,
on Facebook.
so now one thing that you also mentioned too as well. I think Zuela, you said that trauma, and you also mentioned that too, Oyende. Now when we're talking about trauma, can we dive into that? Like what, like obviously there's mental trauma, but what do we trauma from? Because like I would say right now we're suffering from all different types of things, right?
Yep.
And I think August Alsina was a perfect example of this because he is someone who probably suffered from mental health trauma. He was addicted to opioids, right? So he had all these different issues that was bringing in, and not just even mental health. What about the trauma he went through as a childhood, right? And the same thing with girls and around his age and adults too as well. So when we talk about trauma, I think it's time, like we're gonna have that talk. Like what is it that people are calling mental health? All right, because it seems like this word is just being thrown out and everyone's just throwing it out, like mental health this, mental health that. And it's hard to distinguish where, okay, you had an oopsie, mental health, versus, okay, you're really in need of what's help right now based on what's happening to you. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Who?
Zuela.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say let's start up from the beginning. A lot of individuals, especially what you would call minorities or majority, whatever you want to call it, most of them came from an era, especially in the 90s, the 80s, where drugs entered our communities, things like that. We had broken homes, so we didn't grow up with two-parent households. I'm not ashamed of my past. I grew up in foster care because of those same problems. So there's a lot of individuals like me that grew up like that. So when you're not seeing a positive male and female interaction, and I'm not just talking about for the kids, I'm talking about the respect levels. I'm talking about allowing the man to be the head of the household and understanding your position as a woman to be that voice of reason. If it was a lot of encouragement of dysfunctional marriages as far as cheating goes, secrets goes, maybe the woman being too aggressive with the man, arguing with men back and forth. So that's the first thing of what we come from trauma. That's not even our own trauma. That's what we're witnessing as a child. We don't have the Bill Cosby shows no more like that. If we did, it got replaced with Tyler Perry. As much as I love Tyler Perry shows, it shows a lot of dysfunction. And it was the agenda being pushed. Almost every show, someone was
even him wearing a dress. I felt a certain way about that.
It was just a lot of dysfunction.
I'm not against any of that. I'm just like
no.
A big black dude pretending to be somebody's.
I just want to point out one more thing about Tyler Perry that I think is one of the most important parts of how they use him. Tyler Perry is literally the male Oprah, in the sense that they give you this perception that this person is independent, in power, running things, making their own decisions. They make you think like Oprah is the boss. Like she got her own network. Oprah calls the shots and makes the decisions. No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't. She's a puppet. They led you to believe that they would let a black woman rise to that level of power. There's a difference between power and success. I'm not talking about how much money she has. I'm talking about how much power and influence she has. But Oprah's influence is not hers. She doesn't own it or dictate it. If Oprah's telling you don't eat beef, that's not because Oprah woke up and said, I got a problem with beef. That's because somebody told Oprah, yo, tomorrow go on the show and say, you got a problem with beef. So it's the same thing with Tyler Perry. They create the illusion that this guy got the biggest studio, the biggest black-owned, studio. He's employing all these people in Atlanta. He's the big boss. He's running his own shit or whatever, calling the shots. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's a puppet. He's positioned there because of his work and service to the agenda. You get what I'm saying? So how is it that a Tyler Perry can have his own studio, but a strong heterosexual male who's gonna change and redefine our social blueprint as black people in film? Where's that dude at? Yeah, that dude would never exist. But they'll let a Tyler Perry exist, where he'll tell you that all these guys are scandalous, that this is what black men do, and basically he's just making the modern, color purple. That's all he's doing, is further convincing black women that black men are toxic and they're the problem. So yeah, they're going to give you all the funding you need to spit that narrative, is what I'm trying to say. but they give us the impression that this guy operates independently and that he rose to that level on his own, rather than he's just a poster boy for the people that are working in secret in this, in the behind the scenes, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So we got to be careful with that.
But part of that is just to add into it, because this is a perfect segue, since we're talking about Tyler Perry, and what his influence is, into Dave Chappelle, right? Because that's an issue that's going on right now. And obviously, if we want to talk about agendas being pushed, Dave Chappelle, right? Because this is what makes him uncancelable. All right, he turned down, I think it was like $40 million. Was it 16 or $40 million? One of those numbers in my head, and he went ghost for a while. And then it turns out when he finally came back, the reason why he ran away and turned the money down was because they want him to wear a dress and act in a certain way that he wasn't comfortable with, and he was able to walk away from the money. Now, just even listening to that story, now, isn't it something that you see when you see some of these celebrities like Dwayne Wade, and was it Dwayne Wade, or who was that came out with that little thing going on? One of these basketball players right out here, when you see them doing that, how much of that was that similar kind of influence where a company comes in and say, hey, we got 16 million in the bank. All you got to do is go in that skirt. That's all you got to do, bro.
No. To be
like,
honest,
what you gonna do?
to be honest with you, it doesn't even work that way. They don't got to bribe these people to give them money or offer them money. These people are already signed. These people are already owned. You get what I'm saying? Like they already signed that contract a long time ago. So that contract is indefinite. It means whatever we come to you with, you obey. And the moment you don't, it's just like Cat Williams said, you're going to get punched in the face every day. You're going to jail. You know what I'm saying? They're going to destroy your whole fucking reputation. They're going to convince the world you're a drug addict and the whole 9 yards. Now, my hypothesis on David Chappelle is one of two things happened. Either that happened to him, they beat his ass into submission, he had to go leave the country and all like what he did and had to take a hiatus, or he was working for them peoples all along. And what they were doing was building up what you call it, what's that called? Like when people trust you, building up building up credibility with the public. So either we look at David Chappelle as a hero because he turned down that money and now he's back. You get what I'm saying? I personally, I'm not buying it, man, because I look at how the shit operates. There's certain things you just would not be able to do if he wasn't compliant.
So you're saying that Dave Chappelle is part of this? Wait, I'm confused.
Bro, I love David Chappelle, bro, but like I said, I believe one or two things happened. Either they beat his ass into submission and he's learned to play ball, or he was playing ball all along.
But how can you say that though? Because it seemed like he didn't want to play ball to begin with. Like, if anything else, he's just like, I don't want to deal with this.
I understand that, but that's how the Hegelian dialect works. They control both sides of a conflict. So
okay,
whoever's the front runner for what you think is the righteous cause, that person works for them too, is what I'm trying to say.
I see. Then because that's the thing. Because then it gets to the point where it's like, all right, then because if we start thinking like that, then it's like, okay, well, who the hell I guess what the fuck do we take as true anymore, right? And I get
it. Your daddy.
That's true. That's what
I'm trying to tell you. Your daddy.
But most people don't have that
though. You can't trust them. Once somebody's on TV, you can't trust them.
Okay, so I mean, let's hear from the ladies. What are your thoughts on this?
In a sense, I have an understanding of what he's talking about. It's something that I wouldn't necessarily fully go into because it's one of those things, if you have awareness of it, you have awareness of it. But trying to explain that to people that don't fully have awareness, you're going to be fought tooth and nail on it because they just haven't accessed that knowledge. But I do feel in some areas there is the overall overshadowing, I guess, authority that is playing both sides. If you're thinking of sports, it's like there's one side that's playing against each other and the other teams are betting on each other to lose or win, but it's the same people. I get that. So I think with the whole Dave Chappelle thing, from my perspective, as I looked at it, because I'm also creative and it's all about expression and things like that. I think more of his message was, yeah, it is very, very offensive to a certain group of people, but he's using that in a more shallow way, a more dark way to show that, hey, you guys are just now getting offended about all these things, but the Black community has been going through this for how long? You know, we still are oppressed. We still can't, like how he said, why is it that I can't say this word, but you're able to call me that word? So it was a more extremist way of bringing awareness to a situation. But I completely get what he's saying as far as the whole plays of power. It's just right now, a lot of people don't have that awareness, and it's like beating a dead horse. I'm not saying that they're
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I said that if people were taught this in the right way, like it was explained the way where to them it kind of made sense, like they would probably get the idea a little bit more. What do you think, DL? Like, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that there's like, I mean, obviously it seems like there's a obvious agenda against our kids, against what we see in media, against like all even down to the Will and Jada situation. What are your thoughts on it? Do you believe that there is
Well,
something that's being pushed and there's more of a heavy hand on it?
definitely. Like Andy was saying earlier about like the building the trust with people. I mean, I've told I don't know how many people, like friends and family members about Disney and all this other stuff, Coco Melon, etc. And they just kind of like they recognize it, but they don't care because they
Right.
love Disney.
Yeah, they're
yeah.
programmed already. They're already programmed. So you're not gonna change their mind on it. But it's like for David Chappelle to go on there, right? Okay, I'm gonna give you two examples of like to me what's like the same kind of sign. So you see how Will and Jada, I mean Jada's there talking about like having the conversation about sex with children. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, Willow jumps out of nowhere and says, telling young girls that sex the first time is patriotic. It's like you see how they threw a whole nother agenda in there? Like we weren't even fucking talking about that.
Yeah, that
We're not
never
even
made any
talking about the
sense.
patriotic
I was
feminism, but
like,
you threw
what's she
but you
talking
threw that
about?
in there. Now, hold on. I want you to remember the last time that Will and Jada were caught up in something that was this personal, this big, and this controversial. What was it? It was their son being the first male to model female clothing.
Mm.
Mm.
Come on, man. This is what these people do for a living. They distract us and they condition and program the next generation with their influence. That's what they do for a living. They distract us from what's really important while conditioning us to behave in a way contrary, you know what I'm saying, to how we should be living, to what's righteous. So, like example, the Bible, the first commandment, they tell you right out the gate, keep the Sabbath. That means don't fucking work and don't spend money on Saturday. Just sit your little ass still. You know what I'm saying? Give thanks and rest. That's what you're supposed to be doing on Saturday, right? Okay. Well, now you got Kanye West pushing for Sunday to be the global day of worship. You know what I'm saying? So what just happened? It's supposed to be Saturday. That's what the Bible tells us. But you got people pushing it as Sunday for how many centuries? The people in power are convincing us, no, Sunday is the day when you rest. Sunday is the day. Why? Because it's contrary to what the Bible telling us to do. So the Bible telling you, listen, you need to be married to whoever you're sleeping with and so on and so forth. And adultery is a sin and all this other kind of stuff. Okay, why are celebrities convincing us otherwise? Right? Now, when they're good and ready, let's say you're going to try to use the Bible to take issue with homosexuality, right? This is how they're gonna try to flip it. Like the Bible is hate speech and the Bible is singling out homosexuals, right? Now you're gonna have a bunch of people that are gonna feed into this argument emotionally, but none of them are gonna take the time to go study the Bible and see exactly what the Bible says about homosexuality. The Bible actually does the opposite. It puts homosexuality in the same category as adultery. You see what I'm saying? In the same category as premarital sex. It puts it all in the same category. So where's the singling out part? Where's the targeting part? They
Actually,
didn't
correct.
target. They didn't target homosexuality. They just said this is another sin of the flesh, just one of the many. Period. Right. So sodomy is a sin, whether you sodomizing a woman or a man. So they're telling you, yo, the back door is a sin regardless. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. You got to be careful with how these people program us. You understand what I'm saying? And then look how they have us idolizing people. So you ain't even supposed to be worshiping idols, right? Okay, what are celebrities? Celebrities are idols, man. They gave you the number one show, American Idol. So they're putting it right in front of your face. You know what I mean? What they're about. And they want us to see celebrities as the authority.
Well, we do. I mean, think about it. We put a lot of these guys in a hero status. I mean, we call them heroes for doing what? Catching a fucking rock and hitting the end zone. Like, what does that mean? You're making millions of dollars off of me watching you do this, and like you're a hero. No, you haven't done anything to personally impact my life. Okay, you gonna live yours at the end of the day. I'm gonna live mine, and that's the crazy thing that I never understood. Like this, like deifying of just normal human beings, and this is why when you notice how most people end up meeting their celebrities and all that, they're disappointed because these motherfuckers are just like, oh, well, I built you up to be this person in my mind, and you're just a dude.
Well, you know what?
Just a person.
You know
That's wild.
While you're saying that, let me say this much. I met that dude Augustine in person, like when he first came out. He had a concert, South Florida, and I went to it, and I had to like do the whole VIP thing and everything so we could get close. And I ended up sitting with Life Jennings. You remember who Life Jennings is?
Yes.
I think you remember. You would. I figured you would be into his music, but yeah, he used to make some really good conscious music back in the early 2000s. So I ended up having to sit with him because I don't drink alcohol, and you had to buy $300 worth of alcohol to sit in that section. So I saw Life there. I was like, yo, let me holler at him. I just offered to pay half his tab just to sit with him. He was like, don't even worry about it. So me and my date got to sit front row at Augustine's concert. Afterwards, she's like, I want to meet him. So I'm thinking, damn, how is this gonna go? But he was actually super fucking cool about it. He's told security, chill the fuck out, let us through. He let us backstage and the whole 9 yards, man. Dude was super cool, man, super legit. So like I could say that that's the experience that I had with him, that how he's talking to Angela Yee, that's pretty much the same temperament that he had, minus the suffering or the confusion. Like whatever he's going through, he was very confident and sound when I met him way back. And that was years ago. So he looks like an emotional wreck now in comparison to what, you know what I'm saying, to the impression that I got from him. Was a dude that was in control of his shit. You know what I mean? He had his shit together. So yeah.
I'm Shabu. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Yende right. Prodigy Hegelian dialect. What's that?
That's what they running on us, bro. That's the Bloods and the Crips. That's the Democrats, the Republicans. You know what I mean?
So like a double speak for what? Because CJ, you wilding out over here. She wants to know who's they. Like who's they? Listen, when people talk about, go ahead.
I mean, to be honest with you, people make it seem like they is so complicated to explain. They, to me, isn't really hard to explain. We have been so democracy. It's not real. We never had democracy in America. What we call presidents and all the people that are calling the shots, they're basically just descendants of royalty. So when you say they, you're talking about the same royal elite families that was running shit 3,000 years ago, 300 years ago, 500 years ago. They're the same people running shit now. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, England got the Queen of England. I mean, you know, she's still out kind of in the forefront and letting you know she exists and she's royalty. But every country has that. They just don't necessarily call them royalty. Just like what Jada is doing is an affair, but she called it an entanglement. Like, nigga. Nigga. You know what I mean? You give it a different name, it don't change what it is. So you're talking about the Rockefellers, the Bloombergs, the Rothschilds, you know, the Soros's family. These are people that have been wealthy families in power for many, many, many generations. And that's who's calling these fucking shots. And they know, listen, let me tell you something. You look at Nike, okay? The dude that owned Nike, that run Nike, don't look like not near one of the athletes he uses to sell his shoes, right? He's not as talented. He ain't dunking basketballs. He ain't winning gold medals, none of that. But that's who he uses to sell his products. It's that simple, bro. You know what I mean? If I'm trying to sell something as a businessman, I'm going to go hire models. I'm going to go hire, you know, actors to put in my commercials. I'm going to put somebody as the face of what I'm trying to sell. So they use these people to influence us because they catch us at a young age. When you're talking to young boys, you can't tell them nothing about their favorite rappers or their favorite athletes. You can't tell them nothing. So whatever weird, bizarre shit that those people are doing, them kids are going to emulate that. And they're not even going to stop and ask why.
I want to bring it back to kind of like the trauma situation we're talking about, but then I also want to kind of go in depth with minority communities too as well. We could specify with Black communities, but I mean I would much prefer that we do that. But then I mean like minority communities as a whole with this whole trauma, and part of the reason why I want to specify on Black communities too as well, just because I think part of that trauma, and I want to get your opinion on this, Wayla, is because a lot of African Americans right now, they don't understand where it is that they're coming from. Like we kind of like talk about culture and black culture and whatnot, but there really isn't a black culture. There really isn't that. They're like there's not really a, because like think about it. Here's the thing, because I'm Nigerian. I'm first generation Nigerian. My brothers, all that, they're all first generation Nigerian, right? And we came here, like I came here when I was 8, so I still had experience back in Nigeria. I saw a whole lot of shit, so I knew what life was like back then. My little brother, on the other hand, not the same way. He came in, mama carried him as a baby, didn't really see much of anything down there. So, one of the things that growing up that we would always talk about, because he would always get confused and part of it would just be angry because when he go out, right, dealing with American culture, it was one of those things where there was especially dealing with other African American dudes, right? I faced that disconnect too as well, but there was always that disconnect, and then also coming home and dealing with culture and back and forth and having to go back and forth. So it was very confusing because trying to come home and deal with the culture at home. Well, he didn't really spend time. He didn't really understand what happened in Nigeria. He didn't really grow up with all that. He didn't really know all that. So there was a lot of frustration there because he's like, all right, I fucking feel American, but like these guys over here that look like me aren't fucking accepting me for who the fuck I am, and then I'm coming over here to a culture I have no fucking idea that I'm supposed to be a part of. So I'm thinking about that. I'm just like, oh shit. Okay, wait a minute. If he's angry about that, and it's only been like 18 or so years since we've been in this motherfucker. Imagine African Americans, generations, not even knowing what part of the continent they were from. And imagine how that anger and that trauma can carry itself through. So I want to get your explanation on that. GL, if you have any thoughts on that, and Yende, obviously, we're going to hear what your thoughts on that is going to be.
Okay, well, I love this topic. If I can just segue just a little bit. Yeah. Let's take my perspective, because I don't want to speak for people that I didn't necessarily live their experience. I am a multiracial, but I identify as African American because that's what I was raised in, somewhat for the most part accepted as. Everything else did not accept me. I was also raised in the foster care system. So when you have immediately detached from your biological family, that is an extra layer of not being able to connect with your roots. So when we happen to talk about this conversation, I had to personally dig myself to find out what my roots are, which is Russian, Italian, and Nigerian.
Shit.
For a large part of my life, for a large part of my life, I was told it was something else. So I had to go through a whole identity crisis and, still clean up from that. My experiences from that, I have a partner who is Jamaican. Jamaican first, then came to the States. And we were having a conversation just how it is to be African American in America versus being from somewhere else. And when he had let me know that when he was in Jamaica, he mostly seen people that looked like him, to me, that was like a fairy tale. Because out here, even though I live in Los Angeles, it's really it's kind of like segregated. It's like high school. You sit where you fit in. So with that, if you are open-minded, or people call you weeb or a square, whatever, you can kind of dance between the different tables and hold conversations. But most of the time, especially in LA, like you usually stick to your own. So him telling me that you could just walk out and you see people of color everywhere and your color is not an issue is a culture shock for me. That's number one. Secondly, I grew up with a Nigerian godfather. I didn't know I was Nigerian until literally this year.
Damn.
But one thing I could say is I had such a loving relationship with them. However, when I went to college, there are different Africans at college and things like that, that it was a culture shock to me that they did not accept African Americans, that sometimes they thought we were lower than. And it was such a hurting that for me, even though I am multiracial, that still hurt me to the core, because I'm like, in a way, I feel like the long lost sister or the long lost cousin or something that's trying to find our way back home.
Yep.
And instead of helping your long lost sister or cousin, you're just like, nope, you're tainted. You're not part of us, when it was really not a choice. We were really snatched away from where we came from. So you add that with the already trauma that we have, most African Americans start off with identity crisis. If you want to ask what Black culture is, we kind of made up our own. And it's a way where we're proud of, but it's constantly stolen from
It's not
us
working. It's
50
not
million
working.
times over. And then even to bring about this Cosby situation and this Chappelle situation, it's like a narrative that we can only be great to a certain extent. We can only be great as long as we get here. But then if we try to push the limits, say like own a company that's larger than another company, all of a sudden this person's a rapist, this person's that. Whether it's true or not, it's not the point, but it's giving us trauma that it's kind of pushing a narrative that she'll still never be nothing, you know? So you have that. And then when it comes to trying to find this relationship in this marriage situation, something that really bothered me a while ago, maybe I'm thinking too deep into it. Maybe I have my tinfoil on when it comes to this. There was a song called Nuck If You Buck.
Oh,
And
yep.
when I, researched some things, there was a thing called a bucking when it happened with slaves. And what they used to
we
do.
getting real now.
You want to get into it? Let's get into
Let's
it.
get into it. Let's do it.
Well, what they used to do to
Get
the
your
Black
popcorns
community.
ready, fellas. Come on now.
What they used to do to the Black community is the slave masters were purposely sodomized and raped the men in front of their wives and children to give the sense that this man could not protect you. He cannot provide for you. And if you look at it in natures and species like dogs, they do it as a form of dominance. So when it comes down to them displaying this perfect relationship on TV and then they're running this circus, it's embarrassing when we're talking about this Will and Jada situation, because we don't really have role models and things like that. And I can say, even as the African American part of me that I see, when I look at, even though I have no idea of the culture fully, I look at even Nigerian families and they tend to hold a certain structure, a certain level of togetherness, a certain level of control of the situation, that out here it's just like we have to accept the baby mama, baby daddy role, the divorcee role, the F boy role, the thought, the this, the that. And yeah, other cultures have it, but it's not glorified and publicized the way that we have it. So then when it is time for us to look at our connections to what you would call the motherland or whatever you want to call it, where say I want to go home and say, hey, I'm Nigerian, accept me. It's, well, one, multiracial is going to be very hard to accept me. But even if you're fully Nigerian, but you've been raised in America, it's kind of like that thing, well, you're not really from Nigeria though. Oh, yeah, of course I'm not. My family has been stolen and placed over here from generations and generations to come. But even that is no healing. So you want to take that, and then you want these people to have this identity of self. You want these people to know who they are, to know how to conduct themselves, to know how to be in their feminine nature, to know how to handle themselves in a relationship. And you got to get down to the core of it. Half these people don't know who they are, where they come from, and they just have to accept that, oh, I'm just kind of floating around finding my place type of thing. And then they look at people like Will and Jada to kind of show that sense of togetherness, that family setting, just to find out that, to be honest, no matter how much we talk about them, at the end of the day, whether it is a gender or not, there's still another African American family in the States trying to figure it out too. Yeah. And I'm not bypassing or excusing the behavior, but what I'm saying is giving us a mirror of how messed up the situation is when it comes to our trauma. Now, the last thing I want to say, because I don't want to, just take over talking, is let's discuss therapy when it comes to mental health. Because we had so many issues coming from the slavery. Well, first, we weren't even able to read. We were taken in a place where we were in full control. If we equal slavery to a relationship in therapy, they would say that you were heavily abused, you were heavily manipulated, you were heavily controlled, you were all these things, right? So you want to take that, and then later on you're freed and you're still dealing with oppression. You're still told on how to wear your hair. You're still told whose skin tone is better, this and that, making you fight amongst each other. But then I'm supposed to sit here where it wasn't at a time majority Black therapists, where now I have to trust maybe this Caucasian person to sit there and tell you all of my trauma, my deepest, darkest secrets, and somehow I'm supposed to open up to you. And one, most of the time you will never understand because you're too busy pushing a narrative that we are a certain stereotype. So while I'm trying to getting you to understand me, I'm looking at someone, or in a way we're projecting this idea on this person that you stereotype me, so why should I trust you? So instead, we don't go to therapy. Most people handle it with drugs. Most people handle it with sex. Most people handle it with everything else. But then they don't understand they have untreated trauma, untreated illnesses, and then they call themselves healers, or they do this, they do that. They put themselves on the platform where they need to be more educated, and then they create more problems. So bringing it full circle, that's the blind leading the blind. And it's something that it just starts, it's just something that it takes a lot of work, and it's not going to be done anytime soon, but it's a conversation that needs to be started.
DL, I want to get your point on it, and I'll tell you, to add to your points, Wayla, I think your first point in the difference between like Nigerian culture and Black American culture is that we still institute shame. We institute shame in kind of every aspect and every dynamic, man. Like even just growing up in a Nigerian household, that's all we would do. Like if she comes out wilding out, like dressing like she out here for the streets, guess what? Yeah, everybody else, they're gonna come together and they're gonna be talking about you, and words gonna come back to your ear, and you're gonna learn. Like that's how it is. So we have shame. We let women know, like, hey, and it's not the guys that do it. Real talk, like Igbo guys. I'm speaking for Igbos because that's my tribe. But like we don't really do that. We don't really get into the business, right? We lay down structures, but really it's the women in the culture that hold each other accountable. So that's the wildest thing. And and we talk about trauma and like healing and stuff like that. Absolutely, therapies are very, very important. But the thing is, right, even some of the guys who are in this therapy space, though, like these guys who are, they're some of the most broken ones, or some of the ones with the most issues, right? Which is weird because you see the rise in this kind of culture where it's the most broken people, or people who don't really even do what they say that they're doing out publicly, are the ones who are trying to educate others, which is weird to me. Go ahead, DL. What are your thoughts on minorities and like racial and cultural connection?
I mean, I think in this country, like in the US, it's a big thing. And it's weird because there are so many cultures here that it shouldn't be a big thing, but it is. You don't see this like in other countries. Like we went to Italy a couple years ago, and I don't know, my brother's, like me, Mexican and Polish, and his wife is African American, and like nobody cares. You know what I mean? Like it's not a big deal. People weren't acting, differently towards them or anything. People were they were just very nice in general. It was just a good vibe. But here, like even, I mean, I see the same thing in the Mexican culture. You know what I mean? If you don't speak Spanish perfectly, then they're talking about you. But if you don't speak Spanish at all, oh, you just want to be a gringa or whatever. And it's like, people are never happy. Seems, and it's just always like a lot of friction here. And there shouldn't be, because there are so many cultures. We should be used to this by now.
That's true.
Countries are ahead of us in that way when they have more of, their culture than anything else. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, it's right, and it even goes to that point where I think it's inherently biological, and I want to get Allende's point on it too. But my thing is, I think that we as human beings, it's just because tribalism is just so strong, innate in our nature. We want to gravitate towards people that look like us or kind of in our own space. Even now with the digital media, right? And people go on YouTube, they go on these different platforms, and they build their own tribe, and they have their own group and communities and things like that. So I think tribalism is inherent in our nature. And the one thing that taught me that was in Nigeria, right? And I think about it, I think about my experience even coming here, right? First of all, the first white person I saw coming here when I was 7, oh God, bro. Scariest dude in the world. I've never seen a white person in my life. Well, you see somebody who's bald, like he's white, like eyebrows, everything like just blend into his forehead. I don't know what the hell they call it. Like, I'm like, Mom, what's wrong with this dude, right? My mom educated me on that. But when you talk about these different cultures, man, what you tend to notice, man, is that a lot of times when we're in this space, right? And because you mentioned this, DL, we mentioned like it only. What's that noise? Allende, I think that's.
Yeah, that might be me. My bad.
My bad. It's kind of like getting in my ear a little bit. But you kind of mentioned that this is the only place that you kind of see that. And I think that the reason, I think it exists everywhere, right? Just to kind of touch on that point. Because when I look back at my experience in Nigeria, Like there are three main tribes. You got Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa, right? And the thing is, we're all black. Don't get me wrong, we're all black. Skin wise, we're black. But why do we still kill each other? Why do we manage to, fight amongst each other? Is because among tribal lines, like literally among tribal lines, right? And sometimes it's actually right now it's getting more religious, where you got the Islamic versus the non-Islamic people. But that's essentially what's happening right now in that scenario. So I think that it's kind of the tribalism ingrained in all of us, where it's like, okay, I get, even if we're in a setting where everyone's the same, there's still going to be issues. I even take back, even in this country, right? They talk about back when there were different types of white people, right? You got the Italian whites, you got the Irish whites, you got the Polish, or all these different types of whites, right? Different ethnicities and whatnot. But they were still treated differently when they immigrated to this country, to America. They were, oh, you're Irish, you go belong over here, and then they end up forming their own groups, right? The same thing. Oh, you're Jewish. Oh, I'm going to form my own group over here. So I think that tribalism is that main point. So I think if we want to have a healthy society, we got to figure out how to work alongside with our nature rather than deny it. What are your thoughts? Oh, Allende, let me unmute you, bro. My bad.
Well, I mean, shit. First of all, American blacks they're not African, man. So the problem is that America is a place where they just kind of basically manufacture everything. Everything's artificial in this country, and I'm talking about from its inception. They said, okay, we're going to create a new place, a new society. It's going to have new rules, you know what I mean? And we're going to control people with different mechanisms. So here they leverage the knowledge. They leverage information on everyone. So they're telling you from this country was established all the way up until now a false narrative. So no part of the story is true. So, you know what I mean? The history that they give you for quote unquote black people starts roughly 300 years ago. Well, first of all, what are black people? You know what I'm saying? The term doesn't even make any fucking sense. There's no which way you can logically or rationally explain the term black. You're not a race, you're not a tribe, you're not a culture, you're not a nation, none of the above. All it is word magic to condition people to view people of a certain complexion as all from the same place, when we are absolutely not from the same place. Africa has several different countries, cultures, languages, religions, the whole list. Okay, the phenotype of an African versus an Indian has absolutely nothing in common, yet they have the exact same complexion. The Aboriginals in Australia, they can't get no darker. Okay, but they want you to believe that all of us are from the same place. Why? Because it's convenient for their narrative. All white people aren't even from the same place. You see what I mean? So if you think that an Englishman and a Frenchman is the same, or Englishman and a Scot is the same, they're absolutely not the same. So we're taught to be emotional and sensitive about all these topics. This is why we never get the information we need to heal, develop a plan, and make sense of what it is. We're constantly kept in a perpetual state of confusion and then anger. They keep telling us to be angry, and they keep telling us who to be angry at. So you're supposed to be mad at white people. Why? Because of slavery? Okay, first of all, less than 15% of white people at that time owned slaves. It just didn't make sense. You had to be able to afford to have slaves. If you didn't have a plantation, what would you need slaves for in the first place? If you can't find work for your family, you can't support your family as a European immigrant, what would you be doing with slaves? Right? So they have you thinking that white people were exploiting black people in general. Bro, use your deductive thinking. That doesn't make sense. These people were coming from Europe because they were poor and they wanted opportunities. They wanted work so they could build a life for themselves. Why would white people be in support of slavery when it's free labor that drove the working market to be non-existent? White people at that time hated slavery. They wanted slavery gone so that they could get paid to work so they could support their families. On top of which, most of the slaves weren't even black. They just keep telling you that. There were plenty of Irish, plenty of Chinese. There were plenty of different colors of people that were operating at the exact same time. Then the pretense that they give you for slavery is false within itself. They have you with these images of Kuta Kente, you know what I mean, getting whipped and black people working for free. That's not what slavery was, man. They just had a fucked up system to where you ended up owing more money than you actually made. The money that it would cost to feed you, to put your children in school while you were working the plantation would cost more than what you got paid for the day. So you ended up dying in debt. So who inherited your debt? Your children. Now you have to ask yourself, why were they quote unquote enslaving these people in the first place? Do you think that white Europeans came here and already understood American agriculture? Absolutely not. Okay, they made fucked up deals with the natives to work the land. Well, guess who those natives were? The same people that we're taught to call black or African American. African American is an oxymoron. First of all, Africa is a continent, not a country. So what the fuck just happened there? Were you born in an African country or you were born in America? I was born in America. Okay, then you're American. Oh, well, my people were brought here on a slave ship. Says who? Says who? Where's that manifesto? Where are these slave ships? Why don't we have any ruins or any records of these slave ships? Because they didn't fucking exist. Why did this narrative come into our schools in the late 1800s? Slavery was way back in the 1500s. So you mean it took them 300 years to come up with their story? It's bullshit. And everybody back in those times was familiar with the truth. And it was that the people that were there were the very same people that they enslaved. But they use Hollywood to show you cowboys and Indians so that you're brainwashed to have a particular perception of what the natives looked like. You think they all look like Pocahontas. Well, here's the irony in that. Those were just some of the tribes, and Pocahontas herself actually was black. She was actually dark-skinned and from one of the darker tribes. But they go out of their way to show you this image of lighter, straight-haired natives, which come from the combination of Asians breeding with the darker brown tribes. That's how you got that Pocahontas, group of people. It's from a commingling, a mixing of genetics. And if you look in Canada and all up in Alaska, what do the natives there look like? They're Eskimos. They look primarily Asian, right? Okay, what happens when those people have sex with the tribes that were in New Orleans and Florida in the South? Guess what you get? You get those people that look like those Pocahontas people. Just like if you go to Germany, they have places in like Belgium where all the people are light skinned and have light eyes. Well, where did they come from? That was black troops that were stationed in Germany or in Belgium having sex with the local German women and creating a whole new breed of people. And when they left, those people started breeding with each other. So you have a female that's half black and half white, and then you have a male that's half black and half white, and they have a kid together. What's that kid? That kid is still half black and half white, but he got a quarter from one parent and a quarter from, you see what I'm trying to say? But it created a whole nother look of people. Same thing with Cape Meridian off the coast of Africa. You have these people that have a distinct look because the French were mixing with the African locals, right? So they've brainwashed us into thinking that we were brought on boats. And then ever since they decided our history for us, they've been dictating our current culture with the entertainment. So black people didn't have the values that they have now. So they keep blaming everything on slavery. The reason why that doesn't make sense is because black people had families. They had a family unit. They had values and morals coming out of slavery. So where did those things go? We didn't lose those in slavery. And anything, they probably got stronger in slavery because the black family had to stick together so tough coming out of slavery times, right? So how did they eradicate that out of us? They conditioned us into being our own enemies. So now we kill ourselves. We kill ourselves through entertainment. We kill ourselves by buying into the culture that they've bred us. They bred this culture into us. So they give us the black exploitation era when you're giving us all these films about pimps and dope boys and that all these black women are over-sexualized. Okay, that's not how the black community was prior to those films. So they glorified those archetypes. You know, your Jackie Browns, I'm gonna get you sucker, your what's this dude's name, Superfly, right? So they gave us those characters, right? Now, once we're coming out of the 70s, out of the black exploitation, now we start going into the 80s, the late 80s, they start hitting us with the hip hop now. You get what I'm saying? And then right when they started ramping up the gangster rap and those type of images, then they started matching it up with the same type of images on film, on screen. You get your new Jack Cities, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I want to get to like because I like that. I mean that makes sense. The only part that I wouldn't agree with is the part I definitely think we came from Africa. I definitely think so. I definitely think that most
but on
African American.
On our own accord, it wasn't being brought over here on slavery. It was hundreds of years prior to that.
Like I said, history is dependent on the victors, whoever run. Like, listen, that was way before I was alive. So I wouldn't know, but demographically speaking, I do believe that like people are from Africa. But now, in terms of like what you're talking about, like the subliminal messaging and like what they're trying to put in the entertainment and whatnot, it makes sense because you see all that stuff and you see that influence. My main thing right now is that because we talked about trauma, we talked about how that dealt with like pain and popularity, and we're also bringing it back to the Will and Jada situation. And we also had a conversations with about like how they can, if you know, because Yende, you probably don't think this whole thing's like it's like not real a marriage or whatnot. But if they were to fix it, how would that work? Because I think you mentioned something about submission. We don't use submission over here. We use cooperation.
Yeah.
Well,
Like
submission means submission. It means under the mission. It means that
Yeah.
you accept that the mission is bigger than you. The plan is bigger than you. And if a woman is
but
married
it's
to her
gotten such a
husband,
negative connotation now. That's the
yeah,
that's the
but
problem.
that's my point, because that's what they taught us. See, people have, this is why majority of these issues fall under willful ignorance, because nobody's stopping anybody from picking up a book. Nobody's stopping anybody from researching. Nobody's stopping anybody from looking up the definition of submission. And when I say look up the definition, look at the date of that definition. So when you look it up, make sure you're looking it up for 100 years or more prior what the definition really is. Look up the definition for black and see what it says about black. And it ain't gonna be good, buddy. You know what I mean? And if you really want to get into it, look up spells. Look up what language really is. Look up what the spelled word really is, and you'll see that people are legit casting spells in language. So what you call yourself and what you allow people to call you is extremely important. So black people in America allowing themselves to be called black, they already fucking up, because you're taking on and inheriting everything that comes with that. Why would a young girl come out here and allow people to call her a thought as a nickname? She could be a virgin. She allows people to call her a thought. Guess what? That's the life you just brought on yourself. You just casted that spell on yourself. That's what you are now, right? So I noticed at a young age how it could be so hard for American blacks. Because I'm not American in that sense. I'm from Jamaica. But just like you, I grew up here. But I came here at 5 and I remember Jamaica. Like I remember the difference. And my
Can I ask you
grandparents.
something?
Go ahead.
Excuse me. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I'm only asking this because, like I said, my partner is from Jamaica as well, and we always have this conversation. Going to ask a couple of questions for thought, not necessary to be immediately answered, but would you rather what we call African Americans be called American? And also, would you feel the same if you were in a country and you know that your family is Jamaican, but or maybe you didn't know and you have no ties to your culture whatsoever? Because I feel like the conversation that needs to be had is, quite honestly, whatever you want to call it, Aboriginals, melanated people, we have been under a giant gaslight where we're told that our feelings are not valid. We're told that just suck it up. You know, you can't get over it. We can't even find ourselves. And that's the truth about it.
But we
And
can, though. We can.
you have the luxury and the privilege of not being, natively American, where you have your heritage, you have your culture, and it's a beautiful culture and it's a very strong culture. We don't have that luxury. Now, there's people in America that came to America that still have connections to England and things like that. This land was stolen from Aboriginal people here. So they do have that whole mix up, and they were able to see the difference between that whole Native American argument and African American argument is out here. If you can prove that you're Native American and what tribe you're from, you can get finances,
money,
sources to help because the wrong that has been done to you and your people. But what do we get?
Well, that's actually hush money, though. Because what they did,
regardless of what it is,
clever.
It's clever, but at the same time, it's no secret that there is a lower pedestal. Now I can sit here and say that, yep, you can work just as hard as everyone else, but the truth is, let me just say from my perspective, I'm multicultural. So with that being said, I am aware that as much as I don't like it, in other people's eyes, they will see me as privileged because I am of lighter skin. So with that being said, I see how other people are treated that do not have my skin tone, that have rougher times, that have the same, probably more qualifications than me, but I am considered priority, even though that's not my choosing or anything, but that's what other people say. So there's a sense of privilege that there's certain African Americans do not have here, or melanated people don't have here. They don't have the all the way. You have the wrong name. You have a Shaquisha
No,
or
just to
something like
push
that,
back,
and you can't get a job.
just to push back on your point. Now, would you say it's because you're light skinned or because you're good looking?